Hello and a warm welcome back to the Pitch Side podcast. I'm your host, the HOD, the PSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version of this podcast and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes of the podcast and all the other content on the channel, of course, including these podcasts episodes you can listen to on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platform. And follow us on social media, site PSP on Twitter, Pitch Side Pod on Instagram, and join us here in another magazine episode, another Saturday episode, episode 141. You're welcome. Before we begin discussing the actual episode, of course, debate points, where we're going to be talking about, let's kick off with some Friday night football indeed, and we kick off from Germany and the DFB-Pokal semi-final. It was all drama in extra time in that game as RB Leipzig defeated Werder Bremen 2-1 in the last minute of the game, literally in the last minute of extra time, to go through to the final. Yesterday, Werder Bremen, of course, scored in the 105th minute as well of the extra time. All the goals came in extra time, of course, after a 0-0, pretty cagey game for the most part. Leipzig had a couple of glorious chances to score in the 90 minutes. They couldn't do that. They hit the bar, they hit the post. Werder Bremen also had a couple of opportunities early on in the game to score. They couldn't do so. So all action was left for extra time. Hee-Hwan Chang scored in the 93rd minute. Then Leandro Betancourt opened or equalised for Werder Bremen in the 105th minute of the game, and in the last kick of the game, Emil Forsberg came off as the hero and scored the second goal, taking Leipzig to their second final in the DFB-Pokal in the history, and potentially for a first trophy of the history. Maybe they'll be waiting, of course, who's going to be meeting them in the other semi-final of that cup between Borussia Dortmund and Holstein Kiel in the second semi-final. In the Premier League, Southampton forced Leicester City to share the spoils and share the draw, despite the game being dominated completely by Leicester City, particularly from the first 15-20 minutes onwards. Leicester City dominated the game. Southampton got a red card pretty early in the game. 10 minutes into the game, Yannick Vestergaard was sent off for a last man foul, and the game, I think, was dominated by Leicester ever since. But despite that, Leicester found themselves 1-0 down after a penalty conceded by Iheanacho and scored by James Ward-Prowse, albeit Kelechi Iheanacho made up for his mistake in a bit and assisted Johnny Evans for his equaliser. Leicester City, of course, have 63 points now, a third after this result. Chelsea have a big opportunity to close down the gap to 2 points only if they defeat Fulham, of course, in their game on Saturday. It would definitely be interesting to see if they collapse again and they lose their top 4 spot. I don't really see it happening, but, you know, there's every chance in football that this could go wrong for Leicester, just at the wrong turn and just at the wrong moment. In La Liga, of course, finally in Friday Night Football, Celta Vigo defeated Levante 2-0 to take themselves up to 9th in the table at 44 points, with Levante 38 points at 12th. Turning the page now and looking into the stories, of course, of the week that we're talking about in the magazine episode here. And one of the most important, I think, stories that are prevalent this week is the potential and rumoured takeover, or not rumoured, it is the in works, let's say, takeover bid for Arsenal Football Club, of course, by Daniel Ek. Maybe if you don't heard the name, Daniel Ek, if you don't know who the guy is, he's simply a 38-year-old Swedish investor with $4.5 billion of net worth, and of course he's known to be one of the Spotify founders. He has over 9% of the shares at the moment in the company, 37% of voting power. He's the CEO of that company, and one of the masterminds behind the success, of course, of the platform known as Spotify. I mean, cheap plug. You can listen to the podcast there, of course. Thanks, Daniel Ek, for that platform. I mean, this is a takeover that has been probably in the works for a while. Maybe Daniel Ek was just thinking about it and, you know, came out to talk about it just this week. Of course, the story is, in short, he is preparing a potential bid to take over Arsenal that is worth $2.5 billion, reportedly, at least because the sum hasn't been announced yet. He enlisted the help of Thierry, Dennis Bergkamp and Patrick Vieira, renowned Arsenal legends. We cannot really talk about Arsenal without talking about Patrick Vieira, Dennis Bergkamp, Thierry. They were all part of that great era of Invincibles, the great era of Arsenal in the early 2000s under Arsene Wenger. So enlisted their help, and he's looking to try and wrestle the power at the club from Stan Kroenke. According to Sven Carlsen, his closest friend and the author of a book, of course, called Spotify, The Story, he said that Daniel Ek is serious about this takeover, and he's not doing this as public stunt or to seek public spotlight or media focus. He says that he's a true Arsenal fan, and he thinks he can do better for the club. And obviously, from a point of view where you think, okay, he's enlisting the help of three legends of the club, so obviously he knows what he's doing. The position of the Kroenkes about this, and, Stan Kroenke will not accept it. As much things as he owns, really, and we're going to get to those, he will not accept that, and his position will be probably firm, in terms of just remaining stern about not buying the club, not selling the club to any buyers. Stan Kroenke, if you don't know what he owns, by the way, he owns Denver Nuggets in the NBA, Colorado Avalanche in the NHL, Colorado Crush in the Arena Football League, Colorado Mammoth in the National Lacrosse League, Colorado Rapids in the MLS, and of course, I think the biggest acquisition of them all is LA Rams in the NFL, and all of them fall under the banner of the KSE, the Kroenke Sports and Entertainment Company. So Daniel Ek is preparing this as a potential takeover, of course, for Arsenal, despite the fact that he's half as rich as Stan Kroenke. Daniel Ek's net worth is, as we mentioned, $4.5 billion, while Stan Kroenke on the other side has $9.7 billion of net worth. And not just that, he's ranked as the 346th richest man in the world. And just add to that the fact that his wife is the daughter of the Walmart founder and has over $8 billion in net worth. So that is quite the strength for that guy. And this takeover might work from a fan point of view. The fans want Kroenke out. They're trying to pressure the club to get rid of the Kroenkes, trying to pressure the Kroenkes themselves to let the club go. For those who don't know, the Kroenkes have been involved with Arsenal since the 2007. Of course, they've been having shares in the club. They've been involved, of course, in the club. But, of course, the perception of the fans haven't been good about them. They haven't been trusting them. The fans have been hating on the Kroenkes since they came to the club. And, most of them see Kroenkes as, milking the club to just propel other things that he owns in the United States. For example, people know that he built a new stadium for the LA Rams when he tried to move the LA Rams from the LA, in the NFL, and build them a new stadium altogether in his city of Missouri, in home state of Missouri. Half of those money and half of the finances for that stadium came from Arsenal and from the shares of Arsenal. So this is a perception about Stan Kroenke that the fans will not change really, and certainly the events of the Super League have been the straw that broke the camel's back, and definitely the Arsenal fans will not accept anything from the Kroenkes afterwards. They already don't trust them. Already the relationship is on the edge, and with the Super League and what they did in the pandemic of furloughing staff and furloughing players and workers of the club, and even furloughing their official mascot, the Gunnosaurus, with Mesut Ozil paying for his salary. It's incredible, really, that the Kroenkes haven't been out of the club since then and have been resisting potential takeovers. By the way, this is not the first takeover. Another bid was launched back in 2019 by Alisher Usmanov, who, if you don't know, he's a ultra rich oligarch, and even richer than Josh Kroenke, even richer than the Kroenkes. He has $10.5 billion of net worth, and he tried to wrestle the power of Stan Kroenke, but he couldn't. He was an investor in Arsenal, despite being an investor in Arsenal, despite being someone who was really, really close to take over the club, but he couldn't. Stan Kroenke did, and he's been running the club ever since 2017, pretty much on his own, really, without any kind of sharing with any other one. The stakes of the club, he owns the club completely and fully. So, is this takeover going to work? Is this takeover going to actually be a success? I'm really interested to see what people would think about it. I mean, to see what the Arsenal fans would think about it. I mean, we know what the Arsenal fans think about the Kroenkes, but we don't know what they think about Daniel Ike's takeover. Will they accept it? Will they just accept about anyone who's going to be coming to take over the club just to wrestle it out from the Kroenkes? I don't see that as an idea, as an actual idea taking place. I mean, I'm not seeing the Arsenal fans being that desperate for just about anyone, but Daniel Ike has said to be an Arsenal fan for life, so he knows what he's doing, and, they will accept, of course, someone who enlists the help of legends, who will, let people who know the club do what they do best, of course, and run the club, and he's going to be the business mind, of course, behind it. We'll see how this is going to go, of course. And this is not, of course, the first attempt of takeover seen this season. We saw a couple, tried and failed across Europe as well. We saw the potential takeover for Newcastle United not seeing the light because of the laws of Premier League. We saw the Olympique Marseille in France takeover not being finalised, of course, and there was not an official sort of deal made, despite the rumours that it'll be a consortium of investors and all of that. So takeovers of the clubs this season have been increasing, realistically speaking, and because all the clubs, and not all the clubs, but most of the clubs, let's say 99%, are in a big financial crisis because of the COVID-19 and because of the lack of revenue from said pandemic with no fans and all of that. So, in my opinion, Daniel Ike is serious. Obviously, we saw his interviews on CNBC, and we saw his interviews on Sky Sports, and he's really serious about taking over the club. But of course, the position of the Kroenkes is the same. They released a statement. They're saying we're not selling the club, and we're not selling the club to anyone. So it will be quite interesting to see how how things are going to be progressing in the next weeks, months. Will it take long? Will it be a long saga? Will the Kroenkes eventually sell the club just by the fact that they own a lot of things in the United States and maybe they don't need Arsenal as much? We will know in the next months. And personally, I mean, I'm of the opinion of Arsene Wenger. I saw his interview on beIN Sports, and he said that a deal like this shouldn't be announced ahead of time. Should be just discussed in private and then be announced in public when it's done deal or it's close to being done, because when you announce it before making any official move, you really have a mountain to climb, and you just, basically you're walking backwards if you're doing that. I'm of that opinion, really, and we will see where this deal is going to be going. A deal worth $2.5 billion. That is crazy. That is half of Daniel Ike's power. So we will see how the things are going to be progressing in the future. A bit of a change in the pace, and let's talk about Serie A. Of course, we didn't talk about it yesterday because we had a crammed show pretty much. Yesterday we were talking about Europa League and Thursday night games and all of that, and then we had Premier League and La Liga. So we let the Serie A till Sunday, and we'll talk about it today, of course, and it is round 34 this week of Serie A, and the battle of the top four continues with only 4 games left of the season aside from this one. And the schedule is as follows: Hellas Verona hosts Spezia today, Crotone, Inter Milan, Milan, Benevento, Lazio versus Genoa, that kicks off on Sunday, Bologna versus Fiorentina, Napoli versus Cagliari, Sassuolo host Atalanta, Udinese hosts Juventus, Sampdoria hosts Roma, and on Monday it's Torino versus Parma. And of course, the biggest theme in Serie A at the moment is the top 4 spots, the top 4 battle. And let's remind people how things stand in this top 4 battle. Inter, of course, 79 points at top of the table. You know, they're winning the league. There's no questions about it. Atalanta at 68 points at second, 66 for 3 teams behind them. For Napoli, Juventus, Milan and Lazio. Lazio, of course, who still have a game in hand to play, 1 game less than others, so they could be 64 maybe by the time that happens. So it will be interesting to see how things are going to be shaping in this top 4. I mean, there's no room for errors for anyone. The top 4 could change any time this season. Of course, Atalanta, Napoli, Juve, Milan and Lazio all involved in this battle, certainly. Certainly Milan had the advantage early on the season, and they could have done with it, but they missed the opportunities. They dropped points. The second half of the season hasn't been particularly good for them. Out of the Europa League, out of the Cup, and certainly the injuries didn't help as well. Injuries at the wrong time, the squad getting depleted at the wrong time. And, you know, the season basically fell down the drain in the second half of it. Napoli, I think, turned their season around as well, improved. Their game is pretty easy, I think, against Cagliari, albeit they shown Roma last week what it means, an easy game beating them 3-2. Napoli done tremendous work, I think one of the best teams of the season in Italy, maybe behind Inter and Atalanta, I would say, realistically. I mean, the top 3 of the table at the moment, Inter, Napoli and Atalanta, are, you know, ironically, are ranked, you know, in my opinion, as the best 3 teams in the season. That is their ranking. Inter, because they've been serial winners, let's face it, this season. They've been serial killers. They've been getting most of the results. Only 2 losses, and, you know, omnipotent defense and great attack as well. They're not slouches when it comes to attack. Atalanta, of course, are the strongest attack this season with 78. 72 for Inter at third, of course, Napoli at 73. So, I mean, the strongest defense for Inter Milan as well, with 29 goals, pretty solid at the back. Atalanta, again, they started the season pretty badly, I would argue, and if they had the same momentum they had since the start of the season now, I would say they've been a much closer challenger to Inter Milan than Juventus or any other team would have been this season. Juventus, let's talk about them for a bit. Let's focus on them for a while. There's a realistic chance that Juventus miss out on the top 4. Let's just not play it down. There's a big realistic chance that they do miss on a top 4. Their season have been unbelievably mediocre. Let's put it this way. They are in the final of the Cup. They still could win a trophy, right? But their season has been mediocre all over the place. They've been completely shambolic at certain games, losing points when they don't need to lose points. And the last installment of that, of course, was last week, dropping points against Fiorentina away from home, where in a game where they had only 1 shot on target and they scored, which is pretty embarrassing when you're Juventus, when you are with that talent, the likes of Dybala and Morata and Kulusevski and all of that, and you shoot only 1 shot on target. That is pretty embarrassing as well against any opponent. By the way, Fiorentina, they lost against them at home 3-0, so Fiorentina pulled somewhat of a double against Juventus this season. I mean, with the Champions League exit, the tension, I would say, about the Super League is going to be affecting Juventus at certain points as well. And definitely the whole debacle about Pirlo being his first season, his future is up in the air, really. And, I mean, not up in the air, it was pretty confirmed by Pepe Marotta, the sporting director, that if Pirlo is going to be to stay, Juventus need to make it to the top 4. Or, in other format, if Juventus make it in the top 4 and go to the Champions League next season, Pirlo is staying. So then in putting the pressure on Pirlo, that basically every game is going to be life and death for him to keep his place in the top 4 because of how tight things are within that place in the table. Atalanta with Juventus and Milan all involved, and Lazio maybe sneaking from behind as well. So it will be really interesting to see how things pan out for them. They have Udinese to play this week away from home, and then they face Milan in a crucial game, I think. Maybe the loser, I think, would be out of the top 4 this season. Both teams coming into mediocre form to it next week, and it will be, you know, interesting to see how they will manage it. In the round 36, of course, they face Sassuolo away from home. That is a tricky one as well to play. In round 37, the penultimate round, they face Inter Milan. And in the last round, they face Bologna away from home. So there's 2 of the next 4 matches for them that are pretty hard against both Milan sides, and that could really define how their season is going to be going down, of course. in terms of top 4, in terms of winning, in terms of having the top 4 spots this season. The table of the Serie A at the moment stands like this: Inter Milan with 79 points, Atalanta 68, 66 for Napoli, Juve and Milan, Lazio 61 with 1 game in hand, Roma 55 points, Sassuolo 52, 42 for Sampdoria, Verona 41, 39 for Udinese, 38 for Bologna, 36 for Genoa, Fiorentina with 34, Spezia 33, 31 for Torino, Cagliari and Benevento at 18th, Parma at 2019, 20 points at 19, and 18 for Crotone at the bottom of the Serie A table. As crazy of a season as it is, I think, in terms of all the title races, all the pandemic affected, the Super League fallout and all of that, one aspect of it I think maybe falls short of people's notice is the fact that there was a lot of movement in terms of managers for next season and for this season as well. It's been a wild season for them. It's been a manager's merry-go-round this season. We saw managers being sacked early. We saw managers moving to other places and being more successful. It's been probably unnoticed again. It went under the radar because of the whole pandemic situation still going on and also the Super League fallout and all of that. But it has been a very wild season for coaches. Let's just recap, I think, some of the biggest, sort of points for coaches this season, been biggest, talking points. Of course, we have, I think, the biggest sacking was obviously Frank Lampard for Chelsea. I'm even bigger, I think, than Jose Mourinho sacked from Tottenham, because I thought Lampard at Chelsea had a project and had something to do, had real ambition about being a coach for a young club with young players, of course, to take them to the next level. Jose Mourinho at Tottenham, I think, was maybe the most expected sacking, I would say. They started the season strong. At certain points they were top of the table, and Tottenham was, fantasizing about winning the trophy and, maybe thinking about statements and media calls for days if he won the title. He didn't. Tottenham ended up with another trophyless season, losing lately in the Carabao Cup, with Jose Mourinho being sacked 1 week before that, so I don't know how wise is that decision, really. Also, it's been wild for Mourinho himself, criticising the players and all of that, and there's been fallouts in the dressing room rumoured between him and players. That happened this season, by the way. The fallout with him and Dele Alli, it happened this season. So if you feel the season was too long, or you've been sort of encapsulated in a time capsule, it's the fact that sort of tension happened this season. Also, I think Thomas Tuchel from PSG was also one of the biggest sackings of the season. They sacked him for results reason, quote unquote, again, and for quote unquote for listeners, of course. Thomas Tuchel sacked for reasons, surrounding results, but I don't think so. It is clear that he's been falling out with Leonardo, the sporting director at PSG, about the transfer policy, about the players being brought, about the fact that they don't give him enough freedom to choose his lineup and to play the shape that he wants to. And now with Pochettino, they do the same. They do play with the shape they wanted to, but I think, is it efficient? We will wait and see till the end of the season. Also, I think Villas-Boas from Marseille and the whole debacle about him being attacked in the training and all of that, and obviously with the results of Marseille in the Champions League as well, it has been coming really for him, and there's been. These are, I think, the biggest sackings, and definitely, maybe the biggest is Frank Lampard again from Chelsea for reasons that he just mentioned. He wants to do a project, he wants to make build a new team, build youngsters about it, there. And then, of course, there's the category of the managers that has been under pressure. And I think the top 4 in this category are Zidane at Real Madrid, obviously, maybe Koeman at Barcelona, Solskjaer at Man United, and Pirlo at Juventus. And if you want to extend it to a top 5, Arteta at Arsenal, let's be fair. All of them were under pressure. It's Pirlo's first season, Koeman's first season in Barcelona. For Zidane, it is his third season since returning, and he's been demanded to... he's winning the Liga already, and he was pressured in the early goings of this season with the performance that he's been having. It was in a bad start for Real Madrid this season. They've been losing points to Cadiz in the Champions League. They were almost eliminated by at the group stage, albeit for a turnaround in the last 3 games or so for Real Madrid. They looked at certain points they're going to be winning La Liga, but they dropped points at the bad times. As of late, they're dropping points at the bad moments and giving Atletico Madrid advantage and even giving Sevilla a ground to cover in the title race behind them. So that was interesting. For Pirlo, I mean, we don't need to mention it really. It's his first managerial gig overall, not just at Juventus, just overall first managerial gig. He's still learning the trade. Early on in the season, he was taking courses in managing, and that affected how Juventus played this season. It's been mediocre for him, it's been mediocre for Juventus, and it translated in the results, being knocked out of the Champions League in round of 16, not competing for the title, even really having a serious threat of missing out on the top 4 completely of Serie A, which is going to be quite a disaster for a side like Juventus to have. Then you have also Koeman at Barcelona, and I think we don't need to talk about how bad the situation is for Koeman at Barcelona. The things that Koeman has been criticised for, not having a proper shape, not finding his groove, although he found it later on, but it looks like he's back to square one, and the result against Granada, we don't know. I mean, he has a trophy to justify his success, I would say. At least he won the Copa del Rey, so he has a trophy to justify his success, he has a trophy to justify his hard work, albeit he's still under pressure, still under criticism for a lot of other things going on. And then you have Solskjaer at Man United, started the season pretty badly as well, albeit the excuses were that he don't have a proper preparation from the pre-season, eliminated from the Champions League, but now going well in the Europa League, starting, at least they've been consistent in the Premier League ever since they've been eliminated from the Champions League. They've been in consistent form, and they are second, and well-deserved. Arteta and Arsenal, the team was almost at relegation point. Certain points of the season, they looked like they're going to be going down, really, and dropping below any other team in the table, but they didn't. They saved themselves a little bit. They are in a warm zone at the table. They can't go down, but they can't go up as well into a top 6 or a top 4 discussion of the season. And then you have the Bundesliga, a complete different world of managers on its own. I mean, the Bundesliga, it seems to be, unfortunately as a Bayern fan, it seems to be on the service of Bayern. Obviously, Julian Nagelsmann moving from Bayern to RB Leipzig. That means that RB Leipzig need to find a new coach, and it looks like Jesse Marsch is going to be the one replacing him next season, or Erik ten Hag, if the reports are to be true. Marco Rose from Dortmund going to Borussia Mönchengladbach to replace, or to Dortmund going from Borussia Mönchengladbach to replace Edin Terzic, Lucien Favre before him. Adolf Hutter to Borussia Mönchengladbach from Eintracht Frankfurt. There's going to be movement in Eintracht Frankfurt as well. There, maybe they'll bring Peter Bosch, who knows. The Bundesliga is a different world on its own when it comes to managers. I mean, they don't feel that they get sacked. It just feels like it is a normal market of managers, just like any other players. They just managers moving from team to team. You don't feel they get sacked. You don't feel the drama of managers getting sacked. They just quietly go from one Bundesliga team to another. We saw Peter Bosch going from Borussia Dortmund, fading for a while, then back to Bayern Leverkusen. You can see it's easily, I think, the most quiet league when it comes to sacking managers. It doesn't give a whole big of problem about sacking managers. Schalke, of course, in the Bundesliga had like 4 or 5 managers this season only, and they're trying to save themselves from relegation, but they couldn't, unfortunately. I mean, it's completely crazy how the season has been going on for managers across Europe. A lot of sacking. There's been a lot of criticism for them under pressure, and it's good to focus on them for quite a while because they deserve it, really, as managers. This is the end for me of this episode. I was aboard the HD of the PSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version of this, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes. Listen to those on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platform. And until next time, I will be seeing you soon. Goodbye.